Greetings, this is the Citizen Exclusive with Mpoki Thompson. Today we're going to talk about investment, we're going to talk about big projects within the private and the public sectors. I am with the Vice President of the European Investment Bank, Thomas Östros. Thomas, welcome to the Citizen Exclusive.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Indeed. You're in Tanzania. You are going to engage with the government, you're going to engage with the private sector. We understand that the European Investment Bank is undertaking multiple investment opportunities here in Tanzania. Just last year, Tanzania was the largest recipient of support from the European Investment Bank in sub-Saharan Africa. 270 million euros were injected into the country. Why is Tanzania that attractive of a destination for the EIB?
I think we see a very interesting development in Tanzania. And I was here last year in February for the European Union Tanzania Business Forum. And there we signed 270 million to support small and medium-sized businesses. And now it's so nice to be back to follow up. Because it's not only signature, we want to see action on the ground level. And we have now been able to reach 10,000 small and medium-sized businesses with our support via cooperation with local banks, 3,000 women-led businesses, and 900 companies in the blue sector. So this is exactly what we wanted to achieve, and I'm very proud to be able to meet the President of Tanzania to discuss these achievements and the portfolio that we are now building up.
Indeed. So I think the government, the policies that have been undertaken under the current administration has enabled you as an international financial institution to support the Tanzanian government.
Yes, we have a very positive message from the government. They want us to engage. The European Union wants us to engage. So that is why we are engaging. So I have a strong team with me today. We have specific teams coming and looking at projects. For instance, next week we will have a team that will look on the rapid bus transport system in Dar es Salaam to see can we be supportive of the next phases. And I think we have very positive signals.
Okay, now whenever we talk about support to Africa, support to the developing world, there is this agenda that African countries, Tanzania included, needs to be self-sufficient economically, financially. Whenever you engage with the private sector, with the public sector, what approach, what strategies do you have in mind that at the end of the day will enable Tanzania, will enable African countries to be self-sufficient?
I think openness is maybe the most important reason to economic growth, together with education and infrastructure and health. So some cooperation between the European Union and Tanzania and African countries in general is very beneficial, I think, for both. And we want to be supportive with good projects, high quality projects, with good governance around it, and in true partnership. We are not here to grab something and run away. We are here to have long, stable, prosperous partnerships.
Yes, indeed. Now, last year in 2023, 270 million euros were injected in Tanzania. The beneficiaries or the banks, you partnered with some of the banks, CRDB, NMB, KCB, to support women-led initiatives, but also the blue economy. I want us to talk about, there's been a lot of success. Over 10,000 entrepreneurs have benefited, women included. However, how do you ensure the sustainability of this support, and how does it trickle down to the entrepreneurs who perhaps are not the direct beneficiaries? How do you ensure that the 10,000 multiplies into 20,000 and beyond?
Very good question. And we want to work with our partners, in this case the local banks, to follow up on how they are using the money that we are providing. And we have agreed upon some very important themes. The gender aspect is very important, blue economy is very important, social impact, creating new jobs, and we follow up on that in a good partnership with the local commercial banks. So we have a very broad set of tools that we can work with a country like Tanzania. Small and medium-sized businesses we mentioned, but we can also do deals with larger corporations where we lend directly for interesting projects. And public sector, of course, infrastructure, water treatment. We have very nice examples of that in Tanzania, in Lake Victoria, water treatment programs to get fresh drinking water to the population.
Okay, now the MSME is the lifeblood of any economy, especially Africa. But Tanzania, there seems to be some challenges in terms of from a policy level, regulatory level. Now, the SME, the small and medium enterprises, are some of the targeted sectors or targeted beneficiaries that the EIB targets in Tanzania. Do you ever engage with the government to try and look at the regulatory aspect of it in order to create an enabling environment for small businesses to thrive here in Tanzania? When you provide support, do you look at the conduciveness of the business environment?
When we cooperate with the local private bank, we engage with the bank to see to that we also can give technical assistance, because some of those banks, they don't have customers like we are now trying to target traditionally. So we can engage by doing joint work together on how to develop their business to reach the final beneficiaries, the small and medium-sized women-led companies, for instance. So that is important for us. And we have that also in this project, and we will announce a 15 million deal that will come a little bit later with technical assistance, but also instruments that make it possible for the banks to actually take a bit of risk and support small and medium-sized businesses. When we are not a bank that goes into big policy discussions with governments on exactly how to conduct laws and write laws and bylaws. That is more the World Bank.
Okay, indeed. But then, is it your opinion that the business environment in Tanzania is conducive for the MSMEs?
All countries have a lot to do in these aspects, but as you say, small and medium-sized businesses, they are the backbone of the Tanzanian and many African economies. So to help them to thrive and not least to grow, I think is a key issue when it comes to also in the end have real wages and GDP growth that is strong.
Okay, now let us look at the macroeconomics.
Yes.
We understand that for many developing countries in Africa or globally, this is a big challenge which makes governments install fiscal policies to address some of the challenges. We are seeing what is happening right now in Kenya, where the youth feel that they need to go out and protest in order to secure their future. The Tanzanian government recently passed its budget. Fiscal measures are always part of African government economic policies to ensure that the country continues to thrive. As an international financial institution, what is your view about how governments can help youth? When we talk of SMEs, most of them are being run by the young generation. What is your view about the macroeconomics and how governments or how international institutions can help African youth?
This is such a crucial issue. I mean, the whole world has gone through quite dramatic years recently. COVID hit very badly in Europe in forms of deaths, in Africa in forms of economies being really shattered. Then came the brutal Russian invasion of Ukraine and the inflation shock that it sent through the whole world economy. So no wonder people are under stress. They think everything has become more expensive. And at the same time, as you say, governments are constrained because they cannot borrow as they could on the international markets because rates are now sky high for many governments, not least the African governments. I think here a bank like EIB and other multilateral banks play a very important role because still the countries need to have access to capital to invest for future growth. And the private markets are not as conducive any longer. We can play an important role, and this is exactly what we want to do. And what we do with small and medium-sized businesses is actually injecting some capital that otherwise wouldn't have reached these companies.
Yes. Now, I believe the EIB Global was established in the year 2022, so that means that you had planned to support countries beyond Europe.
Yes.
The strategy or the end goal for the EIB Global after 2 years on, how are you seeing the trajectory of the vision that you had created for the EIB Global?
We have been active in Africa since 1965. So we are experienced partner in Africa, but we wanted to be even better. So that is why we created EIB Global. And one of the things that we do now more extensively is partnerships. We partner up with WHO on health issues, with United Nations agencies in different fields, but also with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, private actors, to get more impact in what we do. And that, I think, has been very successful. So now we are looking at how we can support the private sector even more efficiently going forward, because it's so key. About 50% of what we do in Africa is private sector.
Yeah, okay. Blue economy in Zanzibar, that is a big conversation over there. You will be meeting with President Mwinyi of Zanzibar. However, there have been concerns about the sustainability of the blue economy in itself because of illegal marine practices. When you develop or when you invest, when you partner with these different institutions, even with the government, to push the blue economy agenda, how do you ensure good practice when it comes to sustaining the blue economy drive? Sustainability is a big issue. What do you say?
Sustainability is key. Environmental friendly, socially inclusive and sustainable businesses. So this is a dialogue we always have with our partners. And the bank is not only a bank with a very big balance sheet, we also have very competent people. Not only bankers, but also civil engineers, environmental experts, health experts. So we can engage in a conversation to see to that we, as much as possible of the money really comes to the best possible use.
Okay, you have partnered with the Tanzanian government to push some of the public development projects, including the BRT, the Bus Rapid Transit, including the Lake Victoria Basin, sanitary project, and also whenever you partner with the government in these specific areas, for example, in power supply, the Tanzania Malawi power project, how do you now approach some of the challenges? Let's start with the BRT.
Yeah.
BRT in Dar es Salaam has been in a lot of issues have been raised. For example, how it as a service to the public is being run is questionable. You are coming in to invest in some of the phases. How do you address some of the challenges, or your team, whenever they are vetting some of these projects, how do they look at these challenges?
This is a very good question, because next week we have a team coming to start to look at what are the challenges and have a conversation with the promoter. How do you deal with these challenges? And sometimes our client says that we have a bit of a heavy process before we come to a conclusion, but it's important because we want to have on both sides of the table safe grounds. Things can go wrong. I am the first to admit that, but we should do a due diligence before we do a project that makes us on both sides of the table feel safe.
Okay. Now, power supply, I'm particularly interested in that because Tanzania of late, we have gone through some challenges, although the government has tried as much as possible to ensure there's sustainable, reliable power supply through, the hydro power dam. However, we still have a long way to go. The power project between Tanzania and Malawi will definitely help boost power supply. What is your view in terms of foresight now? How are you approaching the power issue here in Tanzania when you decide to support such a project? What is your view? What exactly are you trying to address that will ensure Tanzania gets sustainable and reliable power supply?
This is a key issue in many, many countries. We are the climate bank of the European Union, so our starting point is always climate. How can we invest to improve or to adapt to climate change? And their interconnections between electricity producers in different countries becomes more and more important, so that we can balance the system to see to that we have the flow of electricity uninterrupted and based on more and more renewable sources. And I think this is a good example of that. And we are engaged in many of these interconnectors in Africa to get a more strong and reliable system. But we also invest in off-the-grid systems. It can be solar in a village that is not connected to the grid, but they become self-sufficient in their basic needs. So we need to see that is not a homogeneous thinking, it must be a pluralistic solution.
Okay, as we're almost wrapping up, looking at the future, where do you think would be the key areas of partnership between the EIB and Tanzania as a country, also Tanzania's the administration? Where do you see the future in terms of engagements? Because you've said you've been here for many, many years, so you know how to cooperate with the public and the private sector. Where do you see the future headed?
So we have, of course, the Global Gateway European Union initiative as our guiding lines when we engage in discussions with our partners in Tanzania. And they point out sustainable projects in infrastructure, in ports, IT, but also renewable energy, sustainable energy, and affordable energy supply. Also health becomes very important. And small and medium-sized businesses. So I think here we have already very nice discussions and promising discussions with counterparts from Tanzania that I think we can roll out projects and deals the coming years in a very healthy way.
Okay, well, Mr. Östros, that's all the time we have today. It's been nice engaging with you.
Very good to see you. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, you were with me, Mpoki Thompson, for the Citizen Exclusive. We were with the Vice President of the European Investment Bank, who's in Tanzania, Mr. Östros. Until next time, that is a wrap.